guys, it's the Captain here. Welcome to another episode of Andertons TV, and it is my huge honour to welcome John Petrucci to our YouTube channel.
Hello.
What brings you to the UK?
Visit the Captain. I felt like I had to apologize after the interview bomb at the NAMM show.
So you flew all the way to the UK just to nothing to do with the fact that you may have been touring over here?
No, that was secondary.
That was after you.
It was actually worked around coming to.
Well, I should start by thanking you for taking part in that interview on the Ernie Ball stand at NAMM. That was, for me, the highlight of my show, cool. Meeting you and Luke and
that was fun.
Paul and Steve Morse. It was mental. Absolutely brilliant. So as you know, in these kind of interview things, I like to get to know the player, a little bit about what inspired them to start playing guitar, and just talk through their life and career and stuff. So, look, were you born in New York?
I was, yeah.
So New York, born and bred?
Yes, on Long Island, New York. If you know the U.S. at all, Long Island kind of sticks out on the East Coast into the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. And so I'm an islander.
So born, sort of late 60s, exciting times for music. So I guess, what was growing up in your family like? Were they a musical family?
Not really, not particularly. I was born in 67, Summer of Love. So, my childhood was the 70s. But, besides like maybe some like Elvis and Paul McCartney and stuff being played in the house, it wasn't a big musical household. My older sister played the organ. We had this huge organ in our
two-tier.
Yeah, one of those things, and she got that. I've told this story many times, but I was very jealous because her organ lessons were at night, and so the instructor would come at night, and it probably wasn't even that late, but I was little, and I was so jealous. Like, I'd be in bed, and I'd hear my sister taking these organ lessons, and I'm like, why does she get to stay up late? So I had this ingenious plan of taking guitar lessons, and then I'd be able to stay up late. I was really young. I was probably 9. I don't even remember how old. Maybe younger. But my lessons turned out to be on a Saturday afternoon, so my plan completely fell apart.
Yeah, in fact, and you had to cancel all the good things.
I had to cancel all the good things
on Saturday afternoon.
And ironically enough, I hated it.
Really?
I had this guitar. It had nylon strings, and I couldn't play it, and I couldn't fret the notes, and I was so frustrated. And, the guy, I'm sure he was nice, but he was an older man with a pitch pipe and trying to teach me the Mel Bay stuff, and I just was like, I'm not into this. And it wasn't until I was 12 where I just got bit by the bug and really wanted to play guitar.
So who was that then? Do you have that moment where you heard a guitar solo or a band and you just thought, that's... do you remember what that was?
You know what? I actually, I remember, this might sound strange, but I remember having a reoccurring dream that I was on stage playing guitar. Awesome. And it would happen like really often. So it must have been some kind of message. And then, fortunately enough for me, where I grew up on Long Island in New York, there was a big music scene, and rock was played on the radio. Everybody in my town played an instrument. Right. So there were constantly bands that you can go see at parties that were playing at the school, the Battle of the Bands, things like that. You walk down the street on a summer day and hear a garage band or somebody. I remember still as clear as day, somebody sitting out there with an acoustic playing Stairway to Heaven. So it was just all around me.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It was a great environment to grow up in because it was just so readily available, and it was the thing to do.
Can you remember what that first guitar was that your parents bought you when you were 12?
When I was 12, I actually went. I don't know if they have them here, but we used to have flea markets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was this big kind of warehouse store with everything you could possibly buy, and we used to go there. And this one, they had a music section, and they were selling a Les Paul. It was a copy. Yeah. It was a Suzuki guitar, but it was like the most decked out thing I've ever seen. So it had a vine going down the neck and mother of pearl binding. I think it might have even had gold hardware. It was black. It was like unbelievable. And
for a 12-year-old though, is that the coolest Les Paul copy?
It was the coolest thing. Yeah. I ended up. I think I traded it for an Area Pro 2.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah.
Who did you want to be when you were standing in front of the mirror? Les Paul around your neck?
Man. Well, I was a big Rush fan.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a big. I mean, when I was when I was 12, I would probably say I pictured being Alex Lifeson.
Because now I've got this kind of funny relationship, I suppose, with sort of progressive music. I meet a lot of guitar players that play that sort of style of music, but I've always found it not to be the most accessible kind of music.
Yeah, true.
So I'm really surprised that at 12, or that you had already decided that was the kind of music that you wanted to listen to. Certainly I know for me, I got into guitar through much more sort of commercial kind of accessible stuff. So why do you think that was, that you what was it about the sort of the Rush and Yes and who else would have been around at the time doing that kind of stuff? But what was it about that as a 12-year-old, it can't have been cool at school to listen to that.
Well,
kind of
that's
stuff,
the funny thing. I mean, there was kind of a progression. So early on, I liked AC/DC and stuff like that for sure. Again, I think a lot of the direction that I took has a lot to do with where I grew up, because describing Long Island during that time, so 70s, early 80s, again, big rock scene, music like Rush, Ozzy when he came out with the Blizzard of Oz, Iron Maiden, all that stuff was being played on the radio. So I was hearing this stuff, so I had access to it. It wasn't just the pop music or the more commercial music. There was this other stuff, Yes included, and all those bands managed somehow to break through, with whether it was Roundabout by Yes or Subdivisions or Tom Sawyer or something like that by Rush. That they had a commercial side that was able to break through, and that enabled me to kind of go deeper. And it would always be 9 times out of 10 a friend or a friend's older brother who knew I played guitar and was like, dude, you got to listen to this, always. And that's how I got turned on to the Dregs. That's how I got deeper into Rush. That's how I got turned on to Yes, Al Di Meola, Return to Forever. Oh. All those guys were like, it's always an older guy that's like, all right, you think that's good? Forget about that. You got to hear this. So a lot of it was environmental, where I grew up.
As someone that was learning to play guitar, did you find it frustrating that maybe the music you were into was really quite complex? Or did that just drive you to practice more?
It did. It was definitely a progression, because I remember trying to learn, for example, the Heartbreakers solo, and some solos by Boston, Tom Schultz's solos and stuff like that. And it was so hard for me. And the most frustrating thing that young players of today don't have to deal with is that I couldn't see what the players were doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? I couldn't watch Jimmy Page on YouTube.
Yeah.
And say, oh, that's how you do it. So I was sitting there with a record, slowing it down, the speed down, dropping the needle, and listening to it over and over. And there were so many things about a lot of the solos that I tried to learn that I didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
I thought I had the notes, like I developed my ear, and I thought I got the notes right, but I didn't realize that they were bending, or there was a double stop,
different
or
tunings maybe, or
anything. Tom Schultz said he was harmonizing and layering guitar. I didn't know what that was. Eruption, when Eddie's doing the hammer-ons and it has phaser on it and stuff. It just sounded like a keyboard. I had no visualization to understand what they were doing.
Do you think it was a bad thing though? Because nowadays, magazines will notate stuff. YouTube will put a million things up. To almost make it as easy as possible for you to see what the original, how the original piece was played. But do you think, in a certain way, the fact that it forced you to develop an ear and forced you to just practice more, was ultimately for the good?
I think so. It'll be curious as to how this translates, when you look back at all this, because maybe players like myself and my generation and before developed our ears better, because we didn't really know. Again, we couldn't see what people were doing, and we had to use our ears and then kind of develop our technique slowly and develop through practicing hard. When young players are able to watch how something's done on YouTube, see it broken down exactly, they're getting there a lot faster. So I don't think they're lacking in anything. I mean, obviously, if you watch some of these kids, the technical abilities are unbelievable. But it'll be interesting to see if maybe the ear training part isn't as advanced. I don't know.
I'm interested to see. I think there are players of your generation and maybe certainly before, where their sound and their style is their own and it's so distinctive. And I see that less nowadays. Maybe that's because there just are less styles to have. Ultimately everybody ends up sounding like somebody else, because I guess there aren't enough different ways. But again, I wonder so much about the fact that you've been forced to learn in a way where you had to work out your own way of playing something, rather than being able to go, okay, I see how he did it, now I'll do it like that. Meant that you have your own style and your own sound.
I don't know the answer to that. I think that style is definitely something that comes with age, though. I think there's a certain point, even when a young player is really good, super developed technique-wise and everything, I think it's a lot of mimicking for the most part, and then I think style kind of follows as you become older. I think it's kind of like that with anything really. It's the part of the brain that it maybe isn't ready for that yet.
So the guitar bit you bad. You had it. Your teenage years were spent, I guess, pretty devoted to the guitar.
I just practiced all the time.
So what was the point at which you thought, right, I want to do this, I want to do it at Berklee. Had you kind of decided that your career was going to be as a guitar player, and Berklee was just a means to an end?
So the way I came to that conclusion was, I, like you said, I really got bit when I was 12. I just started practicing all the time, trying to learn as much as I could. I was playing now on Long Island in New York. Soccer or football is actually a really big popular sport in New York. So I was really into that, and once I got into music, I kind of dropped that. So I dropped everything, and I just would play guitar all the time. Started to listen to more and more challenging music, progressive bands and players. Got myself up to where I was learning, Dregs pieces and Yngwie when he came out and all that stuff, and really trying to shred. And at the same time, really into the band angle. So super into Rush, super into Maiden, Metallica early on when they were really young. Yes, and Queensryche and bands like that. So me and my buddies, we'd go to, whenever these bands would come through New York at either Madison Square Garden or the Nassau Coliseum, we'd go see them. And that was the other bit of the bug that got me, was I want to be in a band.
That guy.
Yeah, I want to have an international career, and I would see documentaries of Maiden in all these different countries, and meeting all their fans and being so cool, the interaction. I'd go to the show and they have this amazing stage production. That was the life.
Have you got the Dream Theater jumbo jet yet, or is that still
working on it?
Working on it.
So besides the guitar playing part, the career part, that I really wanted to be in a band. That was a big focus. And one of my best friends back then, John Young, who I met around that age in middle school, we're still in Dream Theater together. Yeah. So we had that dream together. But as far as Berklee, when I really was decided I wanted to be really serious, I looked to my idols.
Yeah.
And my idea was I'm going to emulate what they did. What was their path? How did Steve Vai become who he is? How did Al Di Meola? And I started doing some research, and I realized, hey, these guys went to Berklee. Seems like the place to be. And so I really got my sights set on going to Berklee, and I applied.
Were you there at the same time as Paul Gilbert? Because I'm just thinking, you're almost exactly the same age, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't think Paul went to Berklee though. He was like an MI guy, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, you're completely right.
Yeah.
I'm getting my music colleges mixed up.
That's okay. Yeah, he went out to the West Coast. Yeah, yes. Berklee and Boston. There were probably a bunch of guys there at the same time. Maybe the Living Color guys. I don't know.
Oh, cool.
I don't really know. I mean, obviously John and I.
Yeah.
And we met Mike Portnoy there.
Vernon Reid.
I can't remember. Maybe who am I thinking of? Maybe the bass player was there at the same time.
Doug Wimbish.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. But,
oh well, I'm sure YouTube will either agree or correct us.
It was
in
like
the comment section below.
85, 86. Yeah.
And I mean, I love the fact that I always loved the fact. I think it must be such a wonderful thing to be best friends with someone from middle school and then join the band with them and make such a success of it as you have. And pretty much the rest of the band, you all met at Berklee. If ever there was an advert for going to music college,
exactly,
Dream Theater would be it, wouldn't it?
Well, John and I went there together. We drove up there, and we roomed together, and we started interacting with the other freshmen. And pretty much right off the bat, we met Mike Portnoy, who was also a Long Islander, but we didn't know him. He lived on the South Shore, farther west, in Long Beach. And we saw this kid playing, and we're like, oh, he's amazing. And so we started talking, and he was into the same bands that we were into, and we started playing together. And that was the nucleus of Dream Theater. And our keyboard player at the time, Kevin Moore, was a friend of John and I's, who we grew up with, but he went to a different school.
Right.
So after a year at Berklee, we all decided to leave.
So you weren't there that long?
We went there for a year, and then we were practicing all the time.
Yeah.
We at Berklee, we used to have to, we had to schedule our rehearsal time. You had to reserve the rehearsal room because there were limited rooms. So we'd have to get up and wait online at like 6 a.m. to schedule the room. And then after classes, we'd set up all our gear and practice and break it down and do it again. During the first sort of winter break, holiday break, we all got together and started recording and stuff like that. And by the time the second semester rolled around, we were like, we're ready, let's do it. So then we had to go to our parents and say, we're not going to go to school anymore.
I think I love the fact that when it all boils down to it, someone who's had the success of you still there'll be guys out there now who are 18, 19 years old whose biggest maybe obstacle for not taking the guitar more seriously will be, well, what will my parents think? And shouldn't I be going to do a more academic path or whatever?
Right.
And I certainly think it was probably hard. I think now it's probably maybe more accepted to go into the creative arts as a degree or something like
that.
Back then, I can imagine. I can imagine families that have. If you've got a hard-working dad and it's like,
it was like
doing,
that.
Man? It's just
100%. I mean, as supportive as my parents were, and I was a good student in school, so I could have gone, academically to on a different path. But I remember having to convince my dad, like, I want to do music as a career, and he would say, "Oh, you need something to fall back on," and he's really concerned about that. And I was like, "I'm not going to fall back. You don't understand." And it was actually a music teacher in high school who, he was the band teacher. And I wasn't in band, but I would always take my guitar to school and I would practice in his band room during lunch breaks or study halls or whatever. And so he knew me.
Your band is, I think in the US, you're talking more of like orchestral kind of
band. Yeah, exactly.
So different to... Yeah.
And so he, at one sort of parents' night or something, he sat my parents aside and he's like, you got to send him to Berkeley. He's like, you don't understand.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I have to thank him a lot for doing that. But it was hard to convince them to send me to
good music teachers are, I think, well, good teachers just generally, I think, are they make such a huge impact on students' lives, don't they? So did Dream Theater kind of, did it reach the sort of heights that you were hoping it would relatively quickly, or was it sort of slow burn? I mean, what was the deal with the early years of Dream Theater?
I mean, yes and no. Like, there's a lot about the way that we came to be professionally that didn't follow the standard rules. So after Berkeley, when we left there and we started kind of demoing our music, and then practicing together as a band regularly, the typical thing that a band would do from Long Island, the New York music scene, is gig. There's plenty of clubs and you'd go out and gig and you'd have your demo and all this stuff, but we never did that. We just kind of recorded a demo and then we sent it out and we got interest and we got signed. So we kind of bypassed the gigging thing. And in fact, when we released our very first album, we played very few shows. We never toured for it. We played some local things, and it wasn't until Images and Words came out, which was 92, and we're in the middle of a 25th anniversary celebration tour for that album. But it wasn't until then that we started actually an international career on that Iron Maiden dream, and started touring and regularly and all that stuff.
Because I guess back then it was all about the record deal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Different maybe now.
Oh, way different. It was definitely different. That was basically the only way that you can have some kind of professional career or exposure is you had to get signed. That was the big thing. And it was, as much as it was, I don't want to say easy, but it was quick for us. Yeah. It was hard because we weren't the norm. Like, our music was completely wacky. It wasn't, picture that time period. You're talking mid 80s.
Guns N' Roses.
Right, yeah. It was, the music that we played was influenced by those bands that I talked about earlier. So we're playing metal music that kind of sounds like Yes wrote it. Yeah. With the singer from Rush. So it didn't fit into like the normal commercial 80s thing.
And that must have been tough then, I guess, because like you say, you're heavily reliant on radio airplay then, aren't you? There's no Apple Music or YouTube or anything
like that, or even social media. Yeah. So none of that. So all of it is reliant on in mostly in Europe, print publications, and actually in the States back then too, print publications. But radio was the thing, or MTV. Back then there was Headbangers Ball.
Yeah, just started Headbangers.
Yeah, we got on Headbangers Ball with our second album. That was
Tell me about the video for that then, because I can imagine this was back in the days where bands had never really had to make music videos before. So
totally.
Did you have a blast doing that?
You know what? It was really quick. I mean. So now, after the first album, second album comes out, Images and Words. Again, the music on it is not what's happening at that time. So in '92, that was like the era of Nirvana, Pearl Jam,
almost the anti-guitar.
Yeah,
kind of vibe,
like no guitar solos, all that stuff. Meanwhile, we have songs like Metropolis that are like all these instrumental sections, long songs. Pull Me Under, that ended up being our most successful single was an over 8-minute song. So we go out there.
Very radio friendly.
It was like a fluke. We go out there, we start touring, driving ourselves in a van, and driving from club to club, playing in front of a couple hundred people, and through college radio requests and stuff, Pull Me Under just started to blow up. And I guess maybe within the landscape of all those grunge bands, this stuck out as, what the hell is this? What are these guys doing? And so it became a rock radio hit. It was being played all the time. And so the record label said, well, you need a video. And we were just on a club tour. So they came with a couple of cameras and shot us at a club show.
Oh,
and that's the video.
Was it? And did you remember miming your guitar solo or something for the video? And
yeah.
Really, did you give it the full 110%?
It's full on. Now I can't remember if the footage. I can't remember how we did it. If we did it actually, like during the show.
Oh, okay, actually live.
Part of me slightly remembers like doing the song twice in front of the audience. Maybe we told them.
I think we should insert here. Find some 3-second clip of that on.
It was interesting. And then, then that van we were driving around in turned into a tour bus.
Yeah.
And then that club tour turned into an international tour, and that really sparked our career. And, it's fitting that we're in the UK right now. The guy that signed us is from London. His name is Derek Oliver. He was a writer for Kerrang! Magazine, reviewed the first album, loved it, got an A&R gig at Atco, Atlantic. And the president of Atlantic at that time was Derek Shulman from Gentle Giant.
Right.
Who I wasn't familiar with at the time, but Gentle Giant is a huge prog band from the UK. And Derek Shulman was the singer, and he was the president of Atlantic. So Derek came in, took a huge chance on us, pitched this crazy progressive band from Long Island, and it ended up working out.
It's funny, isn't it? That sort of. I know when I learned to play guitar in the 80s, where I guess there wasn't really anybody to look up to that wasn't pretty good.
Yeah,
it was like
there was like any given song there'd be a guitar solo on it that was like whoa.
And I certainly remember at the time thinking, I'm sure this, it's tough it's tough to get to a level where you actually think, I'm doing okay here. And then I guess the positive thing of the whole Nirvana and over here, we had the Britpop thing happened, was that it did become very accessible again, guitar. You could have a guitar hero that just played 3-chord tricks,
But you're right, back then you think about, whether it was Scorpions or Rat or, whatever you're hearing at that time, there was always some like ridiculous guitar solo that you couldn't play.
But I think now it's what's really nice now is that what YouTube and music streaming has kind of brought along is this ability to just pick and choose what you want to listen to when you want to listen to it, rather than radio stations going, well, this is the direction we're going in. And in fact, you had it. One of the things I think in the US. You always had multiple radio stations covering multiple genres. Over here, we literally would have had, 2 or 3 mainstream radio stations, and so what they were playing was what you listened to.
That was it, exactly.
That was it.
And obviously, that changed also with satellite radio too, because now you have stations that are more specialized to different genres, and bands like us could be played. Our songs could be played. Even now it's hard to get our songs played on traditional radio. We still don't fit in. We're not like what's being played. So it's good to have those other outlets.
So let's talk about, so I'm guessing, how early on in your Dream Theater journey did you start to be recognised as, kind of like a bit of a guitar hero, and then you would have had maybe the opportunity to start working with different brands.
Yeah.
How long into the Dream Theater thing were you before that started happening?
I don't think it was really. It was really when we were recording Images and Words. So that was 91. We started recording that, where I had started a relationship with a guitar company. It was Ibanez at the time, and it's when I had started my first signature guitar. But I always had this interest in gear. I think most guitar players do. Mine was kind of like on overdrive. I was really, really into boogie.
Yeah.
And I played boogies forever. I was really into pedals and gear and delays, and even when I got the first opportunity to have a signature model, I was so into like what could be done on the instrument.
So do you think that Steve Vai kind of, he was the guy I remember as he had the racks full of all the Eventide harmonizers, didn't he?
Sure.
And he had his own signature guitars, and he was doing stuff to them, and his own pickups and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Him more than anybody, I think, at that time, really.
Yeah, definitely. And Steve Lukather was another guy that was totally into that. There's certain guys that just have this head, like just where you're just really intrigued by gear and tweaking. And, when I was given the opportunity to actually have my own say go into an instrument, it was like opening up this huge door. Fast forward to my relationship with Music Man, which is now in its 17th year. It's unbelievable. One of the best things I ever did was to join the Music Man family. But that has taken it to a whole different level, where literally all of my concerns, whims, wishes, desires as far as how an instrument should perform and be built have been not only listened to but realized in this whole line of guitars. It's pretty incredible. It's very humbling.
You can definitely tell you're not. So many signature guitars, and this is no disrespect to signature guitars out there, are from a guy who's played a Fender Strat all his life, and Fender go, "Hey, do you want a signature deal?" And he's like, "Yeah, if you could just make me that in my favorite color, that would be awesome." And then there's the signature guitar. Nothing wrong with that at all. But your guitars, they definitely weren't. Oh, could you just make me this silhouette in my favorite color? And I could see. Do you think you might have been a luthier had you not, in another life,
maybe
a parallel universe?
Something with design. I mean, I was really into art when I was younger. I used to draw and paint, and I was into mathematics and stuff. So there's something in my brain that likes
Leonardo da Vinci. That's what it is, isn't it?
Hey, you said it now.
Well, I'm just because that's that kind of mathematics and art kind of collide, isn't it?
Right, there is. So there's always been a part of me that a creative side and a complex side. I guess that's kind of what led to me being into to answer an earlier question, being into this kind of progressive music, challenging music. It's like part of my brain wanted to be challenged.
So what have we got here that's most similar to the first JP that you would have done?
To the first one
that you've got on your side, is it?
Well, these are mostly Majesties. The very first JP, well, we don't really have one, but it started with like, it's right over here. This would be the most similar. This is a 16. So all these guitars started with this kind of shape, the double cutaway. Super Strat shape. The big signature from the first JP was this arm slot thing. I'm really into how can not only the guitar but all the gear that I use and play, even down to the pick, how can that help me as a player? Yeah. When you're playing on stage, everything's magnified. You have lights in front of you, you have people in front of you, you're playing, it's loud. You want to be as comfortable as you can. So I notice all these tiny little details. So one of the things we did is this arm scoop. So when I was playing, I didn't want my arm to be pushed out, like if you were playing an acoustic or a Les Paul. I wanted my arm to be flat. And so we had this great R&D moment where Sterling Ball put some like hand cream on my arm, and then I played the guitar like this, and the mark that it left was the angle for.
Oh, I see what you mean. As it got wider, very
that
clever.
that was where to start this angle, we started with the JP6 and went on from there, and it developed into the BFR.
Yep.
And later on, the sort of anniversary series, I guess you would call them. Like when I was with Music Man for 10 years, we did the JPX.
Yep.
We changed the body shape a little bit, and then it turned into a JP11 and 12.
Was it the necks on? Because Music Man for me have always their signature thing is you just pick the thing up and you go, this doesn't feel like anything else I've ever played.
Yeah.
Some people are going to love that, some people maybe not.
Sure.
But it's a thing, isn't it? So is that what? Were you one of those? You picked it up and you just went, oh wow, this is.
Well, I remember the first time being drawn to Music Man. I mean, you're right. There's something about when you pick one up, you get a couple of feelings. One of them is this guitar feels amazing. It doesn't feel like anything I've ever played before, and you also notice the beauty of the instrument because their whole thing is like, it's not only what the guitar sounds like and feels like, but it's the aesthetics. And they're just so beautifully made. You're just kind of like in awe, like, oh my God, this is like a piece of art. And so, that drew me in. I remember picking up a long time ago, like the Van Halen model that they did in the store. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable.
I don't think I've ever seen one of those.
Yeah.
So this is that was, wow, look, we won't talk about
that. Was a long time ago,
It. But look, so so the Majesty then, which I guess was the first. It's quite a departure, isn't it? From if you were a non-guitar player and you stood, 10 meters away from a JP, you'd go, I can see it's a sort of a Strat-inspired kind of vibe to it. The Majesty really is. Is this the first one that they let you just go, look, go on then, John. you tell us what you want and
right.
Because this is a cool looking guitar.
It is. Thank you. I'll tell you the story behind it. Over the course of 17 years, we developed certain things about the guitar through R&D, meaning me playing live or being in the studio and saying, "Oh, I wish this was like this." And a lot of those decisions have been consistent on all the models. So one of the first things we did, just for a little history, is I'm all about ergonomics. So I wanted the controls to be like in the arc of my hand.
Right.
That's why they're laid out this way in that curve. That's why this toggle switch is on an angle and not straight up and down. Because when your hand moves, it does this. Right? It doesn't do that. That would be awkward. And even the piezo magnetic control is up here. So everything is kind of in this sweep. That was the first thing. Things like the neck carve, the fret size, the fretboard radius. These are things that kind of changed and got tweaked till eventually they were just perfect. Everything was exactly, even the whammy bar that we designed. So once we got to that point and everything was perfect, I said, let's change it all. No, I really wanted to do a neck through model. That's something that we didn't do. So up to until the Majesty, everything was the bolt on. So I had this idea for a neck through model, and I drew this thing out. I called it the Stallion.
Right.
I figure I'm Italian, I'm from New York, let's call it the Stallion. Called up Sterling Ball. I was like, I got this idea for a guitar. And of course, in true Sterling fashion, he's like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so it turned into the Majesty. Now, Majesty, little history, that was the first name of Dream Theater. We were called Majesty. When we were at Berkeley and we started, we came up with the name Majesty. And the symbol that's on the guitar is an M for Majesty. That was the symbol that we used, and it turned into our Dream Theater logo for all these years. So that's what that is. If you look at it, it's just really an M.
It's like absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very
so
cool.
Anyway, I thought it would be fitting to call the guitar a Majesty because it kind of tied in the history of the band. And so we did this neck through, and I have to hand it to Drew Montel over there, the engineer who between him and Dudley, drew up the shape for the guitar, sent me drawings and you know, programs and 3D pictures to kind of, you know, hone in on the shape, and eventually come up with this unbelievably easy to play instrument. That's the whole thing about the Majesty. I wanted it to be the easiest guitar on the planet to play. I don't want anything getting in my way. You know, even something like this was a discussion that Sterling had. We talked about upper fret access when you play large stretches like this, and everybody kind of thinks about this bottom access. But Sterling was like, well, what about the top? You know, as your thumb's going up, it usually has to stop right there. What if we took out this triangle of doom?
Yep.
So
you're up to 22nd fret.
You can go right up there and grab the guitar. So it kind of made the guitar have this very unique look over here. It honestly, honestly, when it first came out, the photos were leaked of the guitar online, and a lot of people were like, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Like, all this criticism. We were kind of, because we were so excited about it. Now that's gone a complete 180. And I get more compliments about this instrument. I think it's groundbreaking. I think it is a true testament to the dedication of Ernie Ball Music, man. How those guys are they're so focused on the art and the passion of guitar building, you know? And the fact that all these little things that I have about myself and my playing that I want to see in an instrument, the fact that translates to something that other people say, you know what? I'm so glad you did that, because I love that guitar. It's made my playing so much better. And
some of the older, well, not some of the older, but some of the Dream Theater stuff where there's obviously clearly a fairly heavy acoustic influence in there, where you're sort of double tracking acoustic and playing big acoustic parts. How did you used to get around that before you had the Piazza?
Before I had
was it just, I can, obviously in the studio, I guess you just double tracking everything.
Right.
But live, how would you get around that? Did you just not do those numbers?
Well, live I would do, I remember, again, going to see Rush, and Alex Lifeson would have an Ovation on a stand, and he'd go lean over it and play Closer to the Heart, and then move off of it and jump into the electric. So there was a little bit of that, or I would just not do it and play it on the clean sound. But I one of the great things about these guitars from the beginning, and the Majesty has it as well, is it has the piezo system in it. So you could either have complete acoustic sound, you can have magnetic, or you can have both. And it's actually something I use a lot. I can demonstrate it, especially when I'm playing on a clean tone, because what I'll do in the studio is I'll layer clean guitars. So left, right, maybe 2 or 4 of those, and then I'll layer the same thing on an acoustic, and we blend it all together. And that's how, probably a really good version of that would be Pull Me Under, when you hear the opening of that track. That's 6 different guitars playing together, and that's how you have the weight of the acoustic and the chiminess of the.
Because that must be a huge challenge to interpret your albums into a live show, when clearly the guitar parts, well, all the parts in fairness, but the guitar parts particularly are so multi-layered and complex.
Well, that's something, I've learned some tricks, because in the studio, what we try to do is just record the guitar as pure as we can. So guitar, cable, amp, mic it up. Any of the effects are post, usually delays, even compression on the clean guitar. And you're using the studio outboard gear and stuff like that. So to emulate that live, even to try to get that double track type of sound, I had to come up with a way of doing that. Compression you can do with a really good compression pedal. The stereo tracking thing you can do with a delay. I'll split the sound with a 7 millisecond delay with no feedback, so it just sounds like your guitar goes widens up. That's a good trick. Using delay in the effects loop and things like chorus will kind of give that big wide sound that emulates that sort of tracked guitar sound.
Let's have a listen to one of those kind of examples of a big clean sound using maybe the dual output system of the guitar.
So let me describe how I would do it exactly. So this is the Majesty. First thing I would do, and when I turn on the amp I'll show you, but the pickup selection is important. So these are DiMarzio pickups. This is one of my oldest relationships, is with Larry DiMarzio and Steve Lucher. These were in the very first guitars I played. So these are Sonic Ecstasy pickups. This is the latest we did for the 2017 Majesty. So what I would do is usually go to the middle position, and it's going to have both pickups on at the same time. And I'll demonstrate this as well, but if you want, you can actually tap them with on the tone control. I'll show you the difference there. This kind of gives like a thinner, more twangy kind of sound. And then I'll put the magnetic piezo control in the center. So basically it's blending the magnetic pickups with the piezo pickups. In this particular situation, I'm going through one cabinet. So the guitar is set to mono, and both signals are going to come through the amp. This is a very advanced guitar. It has the game changer in there. You can set it to stereo. And then you can split the signal, which is what I do live. So the piezo goes to a DI.
Just use like a Y cable, do you?
Yeah, a box. We have a box that does that, and then and the magnetic goes to my rig. All right. So speaking of the rig, so this is if we take an aside for a second.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is like a dream come true. Remember, I said since I was a kid, I was playing boogies, and I played boogies my entire life and collected them. And never thought I'd see the day where I saw my name on a book. That still, when I look at that, I get the chills. And one of my favorite boogies of all time is a Mark II C+. So that's the amp.
Always popular, isn't it?
It is. It's kind of like the holy grail of boogies. That was on Master of Puppets. Right? That's like the amp to go to. So that was built in the 80s, all different incarnations of it. This is the first reissue of a Mark II C+.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was the whole thing when I went to Randall Smith and Doug and all the guys there, Jim. It was like, I want to do a real reissue of that amp, like no shortcuts. So we did the same circuit, same, if you look in the back, big ass transformer. But what we did is we modernized it as per my requirements as a player.
Most of this stuff wasn't on that.
Amplifier. So really quickly, I know we want to get to the clean sound, but really quickly on this. So the original Mark II C+ it just had one row of controls, and some of them didn't even have a graphic EQ. But
really?
Yeah, but mostly they would have one graphic EQ. So it had 2 channels, a clean and a lead. And the controls were shared. So let's say you had this lead sound where you had the gain up high and you really loved it. You'd go to switch to the clean, and your clean sound would be too overdriven. So there was no, flexibility there. If you wanted multiple sounds, you had to get multiple amps, which I did at one point. If you look back at my old rigs, and I'd use an amp switcher and go between 3 different C+. Right? So my thing was...
all 3 C+. Right.
Yeah. So my thing is I want like 3 C+.
This is where I think this is where the working out obsession has come from.
Exactly.
With,
carrying all that stuff. So to update it, I was like, well, I want separation, clean channel. A high gain channel I can use for like the heavy stuff, and then a high gain channel I can use for leads. And I want to have 2 EQs because let's say I set this EQ from my crunch sound, and I scoop the mids and I have this metallic sound. That's not going to translate to my lead sound.
No.
Right? So let's have a second EQ that I can shape as well. And Boogie made good on all those requests. So now you have a C+ that has a separate separate clean, and then 2 separate high gain channels and 2 EQs.
It's mad how small it is as well, isn't it? You kind of think it should be, there's amps with half the number of features of this that are 50% longer, aren't they?
We wanted to keep it rack mountable and keep it in that original like kind of boogie size. And the layout is all the artistry of Randall Smith. He's totally into the way it lays out and looks. The amp, obviously has an effects loop. This is the first boogie with built-in MIDI.
This is all mother of pearl inlay.
This is. Now this particular
so
one, this particular one here is a limited edition. So we did about 300 or so limited edition that are signed by myself and Randall, where it has special things like the ox blood stain front, the inlaid mother of pearl boogie logo, and even the bezel here is a different kind of color. It's like a gunmetal color. But the standard one is black. Everything's black. Yeah. Or you can, Boogie's great. You can customize anything.
Yeah.
You can put
your
snake
purple
skin and
crocodile skin.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So anyway, so we talked about the clean sound. So what I would do, I guess the biggest way I could describe this is I like to visualize the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So for a clean sound, I almost think of a piano.
Right.
And I think, okay, well, I want this kind of weighted sound that has sustain, but that has some nice crystal, you know, high end, and doesn't really have a lot of middle.
No.
You know? So when I visualize that, we'll set the amp that way.
Big grand piano sound, I get it.
Yeah, and really super, super clean. So one of the things about my request for Channel 1 was I didn't want the amp to break up at all. I want it to be as clean can be.
Right.
Right? So I'd set the preamp, the gain, you know, relatively low, depending on your volume. The presence is going to give all of your crystalness, so you can have that relatively high. That's the nice top end kind of finishing touch. Treble, anything above, you know, 5 a little bit is fine. Pull the middle to give that scoop sound, and then the weight on the bass control, you know, 5 or below, something like that. So that would just be like eyeballing it, and that's no graphic EQ. You can put one on, but I have it off. So that would be the clean sound. So I think, again, middle position. All right, so that's on the middle position.
And that's typically you'd use that middle position just for cleans, or?
Yeah, exactly. I generally use it for cleans. I rarely use it for playing lead stuff, although you can. That's just my taste. If you wanted to do the coil tap, it'll give that more sparkly sound. So. I guess it becomes a little less full.
Yeah.
Takes out some of the bass and kind of gives that really sparkly, scooped out sound. That was something that we did early on when I started working with DiMarzio, because it was a sound where I almost wanted that single coily sound, but I didn't want to break from 2 humbuckers.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, all my guitars have always 2 humbuckers. No mounting rings, so you can. For me, I take my pinky and I kind of lock it under the.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the pickup. So
that's a, because I know that there's the old Eddie Van Halen story, isn't there? That if you don't have the mounting rings, you get more resonance through the pickup.
Well, yeah,
is yours more about just how to hold the guitar?
Yeah, it was the hold, and going by that Eddie Van Halen theory, I also subscribe to that. So they're mounted direct into the wood. The cool thing about the Majesty is this whole piece. So the neck, the headstock, and then the shield here is all one piece of mahogany. And then the in this case, the African mahogany is built around that, and then there's a maple top.
Yeah.
So that combination.
Oh, I see. So this section here, that's still part of the neck, is it?
Yeah.
And the mahogany's glued on either side.
Exactly.
And this shield is kind of laid in on the top.
Exactly.
It's a stunning looking guitar. I mean, they obviously do something similar, but with like a carbon graphite kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Is this actually carbon graphite, or is this like a paint finish to make it look?
I'll tell you what that is. So originally, the inspiration for the aesthetic, for the look of the guitar, came from a BMW M6. Yes. And the particular one I looked at was a white one. So it was a white frozen paint.
A little easier to see on that one.
Yeah, so a white frozen paint with a carbon fiber top and black chrome rims. And I wanted my guitar to look like that. So we did all this frozen paint. So the blue and frozen white and black, that's what that look is. The way we did the carbon fiber, this was like a Music Man challenge. Like, how could we do a carbon fiber top? And we talked about several things. Like, we can use actual carbon fiber. We could use some kind of decal, not a decal, but like they do the wraps and things like that. So Drew and the engineers came up with this brilliant way to still use maple. So to retain the tone wood of maple.
Yep.
Laser etch it into a carbon fiber pattern. And now this is the Arctic Dream, which changes colors.
Ooh.
And then sand it and stain it black to look like carbon fiber. And if you go right up...
So it's etched?
That's etched maple.
Wow.
Is that insane?
Do you know what? You can see it. If you get really close, on this particular one, just behind the tremolo system, you can actually see the little bit of the flame maple.
There you go. Crazy, right?
I assumed it was a decal.
No.
That's insane.
That is what I'm talking about. That's that attention to detail and art and workmanship.
You know what? When you know what you're looking for now on this, you can actually see the grain of the wood on all of these.
Is that crazy or what? Yeah, insane.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the shape of that shield comes from the original. When we first came out with the model, they did a JP logo that is in like a bullet shape. Yeah. That bullet shape is it's still on the Majesty. It's on the inlays, fret markers, but originally that was at the first fret. Yeah. So it kind of carries that bullet shape with the shield. So with the Monarchy, what we did is, instead of doing the frozen paint or the stained wood, like the Artisans have a stained wood violin finish, I wanted to do a high gloss finish, because I love the look of the BFRs, where you could really see the figured wood through the finish. And so in this case, we have African mahogany and then the maple top, and you can see the beautiful figure on there. So we did away with the carbon fiber weave. But on the back of the guitar, here's another cool thing. It's actually, let me do this. It's actually a satin finish.
Oh, okay.
Right? So
that changes literally at the edge of the top, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So the feel of the back of the neck and then the wood here against your clothing. Again, this is all performance stuff. It feels really smooth and silky and nothing sticks to you. So that's another really cool feature.
So let's try that clean sound again with but where you blend in because I love that. I love that sound that you get, in the albums where it is a layered acoustic and electric sound together.
So here's the piezo by itself would be. Even just through an amp, it sounds cool.
Even though there's just regular 12-inch speakers, whatever, it still sounds great.
It has that punchy sound. That's going to give that piano low end that we were talking about. Yeah. So when you combine the two, right? That's gorgeous. That is that piano-y sound. Now to get that album sound, I would put a compressor pedal in the front. Chorus, which is always nice. In this case, let's see, we have this chorus set up through the front. Normally I would use, I would do it this way for a certain effect, have the chorus in the front, or use the Axe effects in the effects loop and use that kind of modulation. In this case, it's a TC pedal through the front. Probably also put some delay on it. This delay, so this delay will give kind of give it that finishing air on the outside. Sort of thing, exactly. So that same kind of progression. Songs like, since we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of Images, so Another Day. even pull me under, right?
Are you a big user of reverb? Or I notice you've left the reverb off. So you're not
like
a big
reverb.
Really?
I hate reverb. No. The only application I find where I like reverb is on acoustic.
Right.
I don't like it on electric. I don't know why.
Wow. I'm like the opposite. I feel utterly naked if I try and play guitar with no reverb on it.
In fact, and I'll demonstrate it in a bit, but like my crunch sound, which is the sound I play during a Dream Theater show, it's probably like 90% of the show you're playing crunch rhythm.
Yeah.
Dry, totally dry.
Really?
Yeah, nothing on it.
Wow.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's just I guess when if you're in an auditorium or whatever, a theatre or whatever, I guess you've got a certain natural.
You do, but I don't want to hear that.
Really?
Again, I'm coming from as far as that heavy rhythm playing, I'm coming from the Metallica school where you want it like as tight, you want stop on a dime. I mean, that's the boogie thing. That's what boogie does really amazingly well.
Maybe we should move on to that now. That
we can
sort
do
of
that
crunchy kind of vibe, and what sort of would you again approach that with? Do you ever use the piezo layered up with that, or is that very much just a magnetic?
No, I would shut it off at that point.
Yeah.
Also, just a really cool trick. I use an Ernie Ball volume pedal, and since the signals are split, as far as the piezo and the magnetic, what I like to do is I'll set this in the middle, and then I'll shut the volume pedal off, so no amp sound is coming through. Right, so. I can emulate it now by turning this volume off. So let's say I'm strumming along. Right on the dime in the arrangement of the song, it kicks in.
Yeah.
All I have to do is turn the volume pedal up.
Yeah.
And since this is set in the middle, that electric comes right in. Yeah. And then really quickly you just flip that off. So
I love how all the ergonomics are, because I guess at the sort of style that you play, every microsecond of if is all important, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, it's funny. Sterling said it once. It's like flying a fighter jet. Like any quick there is going to change something. So as far as like the heavy rhythm thing, in building the guitar from the very beginning. Due to the style of Dream Theater. Yeah. So, I had mentioned, Metallica and Maiden, stuff like that. I always wanted to have like a big, crunchy, heavy sound. Now that's only gotten heavier as music has developed, right? This guitar comes in a 7-string as well. We've always done a 7-string. So songs starting from our album Awake, I started using a 7-string, and you need the definition to in the amp and in the guitar and the pickups to be able to handle all that low end. Yeah. You need the clarity and the cut, and I guess the tightness is the most important thing. The last thing you want is like a flubby, loose bottom end, and that's not only in a sound but as a person.
I think that's one of the toughest. As I've talked to guitar players that play either with heavy drop tunings or 7 strings or whatever and high gain.
Yeah.
It almost is, I think if you're a 6-string player in concert pitch or playing regular pitch, it's okay to have the amp aid the bass end. You kind of want that, you want to give it that. But as soon as you've actually got a string that is making a note like a bass, if the amp's trying to help that as well, as you say, the thing just goes flubby.
It goes crazy, yeah.
And it's like, for me, it's about creating. The amp is almost then trying to just create the most percussive kind of sound,
right?
Less gain, tighter bass end, and then it's all from the string.
Totally, you're absolutely right. That percussive quality. I tend to lock into the kick and snare, and we do all these sort of complex rhythms. Yeah. And part of the beauty of the sound when you get that really together is that you sound like sort of one machine that's doing. So there are tricks on how to achieve that.
Yeah.
So first of all, as far as the guitar is concerned, I would always use the bridge pickup because that's going to be the sound. It's going to be the most forward, brighter sound. In designing the pickups with DiMarzio, we've always had that sound in mind.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk to Steve Blucher or Larry about what I want this pickup to do, the number one purpose is to do that tight, big rhythm sound. Even probably more so than lead stuff. You know, that's the number one thing. As far as the amp is concerned, this is the signature thing that boogies do. You know, practically all of them, but especially a 2C Plus, is to do that tight on a dime thing. So here's the trick. Here's how you do it. So I would go to channel 2. That's my first of 2 high gain sounds. You mentioned it before. You don't have to have the gain that high.
Yeah.
You know, if you, and I can demonstrate, if you start cranking that, it's going to get looser.
Yeah.
Which you might want for certain things.
Yeah.
So you might not want to go above, you know, there, like 1 or 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Also, the thing that's going to contribute to that flubbiness is the bass. So this will work exactly like a C plus if you own one. On those amps, if you set it high, the gain high, you got to crank the bass down.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll have it off.
Yeah.
Right? So off to 1.
I've seen that. Well, I remember the first time I started seeing these settings.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? But you have to.
You have to. This is all feeding the preamp. Yeah. Anything you stick in there is going to like overload it, right? Again, that scooped sound. You know, a lot of guitar players, a lot of rock guitar players like a real mid-heavy sound for more traditional rock and roll. For metal, you want to get that scoop sound and kind of like, you know, take that out of the way. So I'll tend not to pull it all the way out, but go below 5. So maybe in that zone. And then the treble, this is one of the most powerful controls on the amp because as you increase the treble, it's going to also increase the gain.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So if you want it mellow, you can start there. If you want it gainier, you can go up. So in this kind of zone is probably going to be fine. And then something worth mentioning also on my version of the C Plus, the presence control is also a really powerful control. This is a control that was on the back, on the rear of the original C Pluses. It has a certain sparkly high-end sound that's associated with it. In developing this amp, we discovered a second presence sound, which is voiced lower, almost like in the 1K range.
Right.
That has a whole different thing. I'll show you the difference. So if you want the traditional C plus, you pull
I see.
the presence, and you probably have to set it low because that control you wouldn't go too much above 3. Also on the gain control, you can pull for more gain.
It's just a boost, is it?
If it's not, it's just a gain boost, not volume. Right? If you want even more. So I've been kind of falling in love with the new presence, and that one you can go fairly high. So
I think it's fair to say for anybody that's not owned a Boogie before, you might be used to having a Marshall or something like that, where the 3-tone controls really just are very subtle. And they just give you different flavors of the same sort of thing. I know I remember when the Mark IV came out. And
very similar.
Yeah, and you'd be like, I've got a sound here like that. And then you just go like that, and you go, it's like, where's the sound gone? Like that. All I've done is moved one control like a millimeter. But they're very powerful, aren't they? They
are. Well, like when we have these conversations about tone, you know, talk with Dougie, and he's like, just breathe on it. Or Maddie will be like, during the show, just a little tiny. So that's how I basically set the preamp. Now, one of the big things about this amp to get that big sound that you need to do is engage the graphic EQ. So these frequencies have been with Boogie forever, right? So a typical thing to do is to kind of do this curve where you might pull out even some more mids, boost a little bit of highs, maybe a little bit of lows, and you get this sort of V look. And there's a million variations on that. So this is just eyeballing it. Let's see where we got. I don't know what the volume is like right now. I don't want to blow anybody off the planet over here. So with these.
It's got that, even at relatively low volume, it's got that throaty sound.
So remember that tight thing we're talking about? That's how you do it.
It's not that there's no bass, is it? It's just tight. In fact, they should just rename the control tightness.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't seem like you've made the sound thinner. You've just made it tighter, haven't you?
Right. Now what I'm doing too is I'm compensating it with the low end over here, right?
Yeah.
So this is gonna, let's see, if I just let it as much as that as you want. Now do me a favor. I'm gonna kind of chug on a chord, and I want you to turn up the bass as I do it. I want you to hear what that does. Right?
Now you've got that kind of unpleasant whoa.
Right.
Whoa,
now if you weren't playing a metal style and you wanted that, it might be fine.
For lead stuff, I think it is.
Right?
Fine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just your rhythm stuff.
Right.
You want it.
And I'll sneak in more bass for lead stuff to kind of get the thicker note. But if you're doing it, you need that, right?
It does sound brilliant.
Yeah, it sounds great. So now this is the other present setting. We pull this and set it lower. This is going to be kind of more. Here, we'll go like super Metallica here. That would be something like this. Now,
it's a great sound, glorious sound.
Glorious, and the cool thing, like I have two goals with that sound. One of them we've been talking a lot, which is that tight sound.
Yeah.
The other goal is to get this big sound that kind of like it blossoms.
Yeah.
And I like to use chords. I owe all my chord playing to Alex Lifeson and Randy Rhoads for doing these big, all that stuff.
Was that first chord? Was that a bit Spirit of the Radio? I think that was the only Rush song ever.
Yeah. That's part of it. Hemispheres. That's my favorite chord. Or Xanadu. So the idea is when I play these big chords where, let's say it's a power chord, but the bass is, the fifth is in the bass below. So if it's a C, there's a G below. And then I use the sus2, so there's no third. So it's not a major chord, it's not a minor chord. It's actually, it's an androgynous chord.
And you were playing the bottom string there as well.
The bottom string is, so I'm basically barring the whole third fret, just playing the fifth and the octave. So you have this big. Now when I do those kind of big chords that have the open strings, I will use a chorus on it, and that'll help out, right? go right back to. It does both.
In your live setup, are you heavily gating that as well? It doesn't sound like it needs it.
Doesn't need it.
And yet so many bands will apply a gate to that. But I don't. It just doesn't sound like it.
You don't need it. Well, a lot of guys do the technique where they'll set, and this might be easier with the digital modeling stuff, where you set the gain really high and then gate, gate it really strong. The trick is with Boogie, it's a couple of things. You got to understand, I know you do, but it's all the components.
Yeah.
So it's the way the guitar is built, it's the wood we chose,
Yeah.
it's the way the pickups are voiced.
Yeah.
These are all per my request, what I wanted to do. And it's the way the amp is voiced. There's no magic here.
No.
Right?
Well, maybe here and maybe here.
We're just going straight in. We have a couple of pedals. So you don't need a gate, if you know how to set the amp.
Yeah.
Another cool thing that adds to that blossoming is the wah. It does that big.
Even your wah looks cool. It's just like
gotta look cool.
I was gonna say, it's like I love the fact that this is a bit of an aside and everything like that. I think that there are when I was growing up and buying my first guitars, I remember guys in guitar shops used to go, you shouldn't worry about what it looks like. It should all be about the tone and the feel. And I'm just like, yeah, but I do worry about what it looks like.
Me too. Absolutely.
And I think it actually, as time's gone by, it's become more acceptable that actually that how it looks should be at least as important as how it sounds and feels and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, here's the thing. Anyway. No, I mean, it definitely has to look badass. But it has to have it has to be able to back that up.
Yeah, it's got to do its job.
It has to do its job. So with the wah, this is the signature wah I did with Dunlop, and I've been again all these relationships, and I tell this to people a lot. These are people I've known for years and years and years. I'm not the type of person who, I'll try this, I'll try that. It's like I find something I like, and then
I think that's important because there's a lot of. I think a lot of people who watch YouTube will see artists like you, and there are many others, and they'll kind of think that the way to go after an endorsement is to just become famous and then just almost anything, I'll put my name on anything if it gets me. Yeah. But I think if you actually dig a little deeper, you find most of those endorsements are relationships that were there before.
Absolutely.
You loved the Dunlop pedals and you love the Music Man guitars and you love Boogie amplifiers, and as a result of that they've kind of gone, do you want to work together on something?
Exactly.
And that's where it pays, rather than kind of like, hey, I just need a wah-wah, who's going to pay me the most to put my name on it?
It's not about that,
It shouldn't be that shit.
I always truly believe the art should come first, and I've paid for all my gear forever, when you find something, you love it and you buy it and then you fall in love with it. If you're fortunate enough to become a professional, you might start relationships with these people, and then eventually it could turn into something that you can help design. But the original inspiration comes from, we're all like gear nuts. We're like, you find something, you see it in the store, look online, you buy it, you get it, and you love that. So it's not like, what can I get for free? It's like, what do I like? So, I mean, from Dunlop, between the Jazz 3 that I've used forever and Dunlop Wahs, I mean, when the opportunity came to do a signature wah, I was like all over it.
We should just, your plectrum.
Yes.
Just as a little, just kind of as an aside or whatever, I think it's only been in the last 2 or 3 years of playing guitar that I've suddenly realized that the little 50 cents piece of plastic is one of the most important.
Oh my God.
You can have thousands of pounds worth of guitars and amps and pedals and everything like that, but if the little 50p plectrum is not right, it all goes to shit, doesn't it?
It's funny what drives us guitar players batty, and I mean, countless hours on what pick to use. Now, again, this is a good example of what we just talked about, because I used Jazz 3 picks, since I discovered them ages ago. And it was only until, fairly recently where we decided to do a signature.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do a signature pick, But it's based on a Jazz 3, certain Ultex material has a certain bevel to it and grip. Again, based on, like, my thought, like, wouldn't it be great if it did this?
Who was it? Was it Eric Johnson that was like the original Jazz 3?
Eric Johnson, yeah, he used the red ones. I actually got turned on to it when I watched a Michelangelo video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he was like, "You got to use this pick," and it was a Jazz 3, and I got that. Like,
oh, right. Cool, man. Well, look, I think your soloing is legendary, stuff off legends. And is that typically what you would go to Channel 3 to use?
Yeah, so Channel 3, so now, again, it's a combination of things, right? So it's the guitar, how it's voiced, and what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a lot of clarity, definition. I spent a lot of time trying to develop a technique where I wanted to hear all the notes I was playing. So the guitar enables me to get those sounds. I do a lot of soloing in the neck, on the neck pickup, so it's a very important pickup for me. Generally, my rule of thumb is if I'm up here, I usually use the neck pickup. If I'm down here, I change.
You get the extra bite down there.
Yeah, the extra bite and clarity. If I'm doing like more of a hammer-on-y thing, the bridge probably works better. But for the most part, to get that kind of thick, glassy, liquidy sound, I'll use the neck pickup. So again, making the improvement on the original T2C plus, we have a second lead channel, a high gain channel you can go to. It's voiced almost the same. It just has slightly more gain for us solo guitar players.
And you're going to dial in a little bit more mid-range for a solo?
Yeah, exactly. And then you have a second EQ that you can customize. So what I would do is, well, the gain is pulled there. We can try that. So it's going to be more gain. You can crank this if you really want to, but it has more than enough in that sort of zone. You might mellow out the top end. That's something I do a lot, where if you're playing up high, you want the notes to scream, but you don't want them to like rip people's heads off in a bad way. So I might mellow out the treble, sneak in a little bit more bass for thickness, and then this middle, there's a sweet spot there that's kind of below halfway.
So you don't go for that kind of Carlos Santana-y kind of tons of mid-range?
That's a great sound. I don't generally go for that. The reason is not because I don't like it, but the juxtaposition of that when using that kind of heavy guitar crunch sound and then going to that sounds like what the hell went wrong? And then if you go back from that, it's like, oh my God, like what happened to your guitar sound? So you got to be really careful. So I almost have to set them fairly the same so you don't get that shock. I can demonstrate the shock if you want.
No, you know what? I get it. I totally get what you're saying now. Of course, I think there is that school of thought that if you take too much of the mid-range out, your guitar gets lost within the sort of the mix.
Absolutely.
But I totally get you've got to balance your rhythm and your lead tone. Otherwise,
you have to. Now, if I was just playing, Carlos is playing in his style, like there's rhythm parts, but there's a lot of lead playing that's kind of in the composition. So if that's like mainly the tone, he probably doesn't have to worry about going back to like a metal-y sound.
And I guess it's all about him and his band, isn't it? Whereas the Dream Theater thing is a much more collective of musicians.
You have to play your role when it happens. So I might set the amp fairly similar. The presence is another area where it's going to bring out the body, but it's also, you got to be careful because it's going to bring out that sizzle. So you might want to set that a little lower when you go into your lead. So without any EQ. So that almost has that, Right? Is that it?
It is.
So that has that Carlos-y vibe, right?
Yeah.
Gain-wise, you can go all the way up. So, but I would still want some shaping.
Yeah.
Right? So
I love what you did when you switched. You probably did it even subconsciously from the neck to the bridge.
Yeah.
It's halfway through the riff, but it just brought a different dynamic to what you were playing. It just sounds cool.
Well, that's the general rule. Like I said, if I was playing down here, I'd have it on probably the bridge then, you know. I'd go up to the neck. It has that more liquidy sound. Yeah. So here's the shocking juxtaposition I was talking about. I'll just demonstrate it, because why not? So if I'm playing a metallic rhythm, like, it's kind of shocking.
Yeah, it's wrong, isn't it? They don't blend well together.
They don't blend well. I mean, that might jump out in a live situation, but that would freak me out. And then when let's say I was on this sound for a while.
Yeah.
And I went there, I'd be like, what happened to my sound? So I'll kind of get them closer, right? So we'll pull some middle, maybe not as much. Dial in a little low end and high end, and we'll get a little closer. This way it fits in. Oops. Just
get rid of this.
That's it. Broke my phone. I think it's like closer now, right?
Yeah, it is.
But it's still it's gonna jump out. What I'll generally do too on a solo, and I can't demonstrate it now because we're only in mono, but I'll have like the Axe effects in the effects loop, and that will give me the ability to have two different delay engines, have a left and right.
Yeah.
You know, two different delay times.
What are you hearing when you're on stage? Are you hearing your 4x12s, or are you hearing fold back?
I'm hearing complete glory, mountaintop glory.
So you just want to hear the amps, do you?
Well, no. This is what we do live. So on stage, we have no sound coming off the stage. So all of my mic'd cabinets are backstage, facing the other way, mic'd up, because we don't want our sound engineer to have to battle with sound coming off the stage. So I use in-ear monitors.
Okay.
My rig is in stereo, so there's two boogies and two cabinets that are mic'd, and it's hard pan left and right with a 7 millisecond split.
Yeah.
It sounds like the biggest, hugest stereo guitar.
And you get that sensation still in the in-ear of the stereo
actually more than ever, because you're totally in this closed studio environment.
Spot,
and the delays that are in stereo, they're these floaty things that are just helping you out. Your little friends.
Yeah, cool.
Repeating what you did, saying good job, good job, good job, good job. Or you suck, you suck.
Or in my case, wrong note.
Right, that does happen too. And then to kind of to supplement that, what we did is we have another set of mini boogie cabinets, just 1x12s, that are facing me on either side of my pedal board.
Right.
And I use those for two purposes. One is I put my foot on them for a little nice classical footrest, and secondly, to give me some sound coming back at me. So I have the thump of a cabinet, and I'm able to go up to the speaker and get feedback.
Right, of course.
Yeah, so I get the best of both worlds.
Through in-ears.
Yeah, so the delays, I mean, this is a mono delay for now. You know, it has this kind of, it's doing a couple things. You know, you can get the aggression out of the low notes on the bridge pickup. Right? That's the Steve Morse trick I like. up here on the higher strings, you're going to have. Using the bridge pickup.
Yeah.
And
I'm impressed with just how. I mean, obviously, what's not simplistic about the rig is the amount of thought that's gone into every element.
Sure.
But ultimately, what it's ended up with is a fairly simplistic rig, isn't it? You know, it's not. To get that sound hasn't required anything other than a chorus pedal, a relatively affordable chorus pedal as well, and an affordable delay pedal. You know, and it just sounds great, man.
Thank you. I think it's all that time, like you said. It's the thought that goes into it, and you know, I'm a firm believer that anything you add into the soup is gonna flavor it for good or for bad, right? So you have to have all the components need to be like top notch. You know, that's the way to go. And as if this wasn't enough, I have a couple of tricks up my sleeve. I'll reveal to you. I've been saving them till
good.
now.
Oh, good.
Okay. One of the tricks is on the guitar.
Yeah.
Okay. So, did you ever playing a solo and you felt just like, let's say you were away from your pedals and you just wanted more, but you couldn't get. Well, this guitar gives more.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So what we did is on the volume control, which is very appropriate.
Yeah.
We added a up to 20 dB boost. If you press the volume control, it's going to give you a boost. Now, what that will do, you can hear it probably most obviously on a clean sound. So this is to give you an idea of the amount of volume that's going to happen. So
20 dB is tons, isn't it?
You can set it lower
Right.
if that's too much. So on a clean sound, if you want to jump out, you have it. But the way I use it is on a lead sound. So if I'm playing along, I got my nice sustainy sound. Here, we'll crank it as much as it can be. And I have a delay. All right, everything's going along well. And we just want more.
Yes, more is more.
I can be in the middle of the stage and just goose that up.
Some of those bends, man, where you're hitting the second string as well underneath of it, they just sound incredible. It's like the guitar's screaming, isn't it?
It screams, but you know, the cool thing is, and we're right next to it, it's not bothersome. It's not like, you know, knives in the ears. That's all the tone. It's the wood, it's the pickups, it's the amp. But the great thing about
it's the fingers, you know, it's like, it is. I mean, it's the
flesh.
It's everything, you know, and you know, I still think the player is the most important ingredient. But then, as you rightly say, I love that. I've always used, I use the spaghetti bolognese analogy. You use the soup analogy. I use, you know, which is, you know, it's everything down to, you know, cables.
Yeah.
Everything has, even if a cable is just 1 grain of salt, but if you can taste that grain of salt, then it's there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, it's like.
And also the setting, you know, what table you're sitting at, the flatware, you know, the people you're with, changes how you think about music. You know, the key to just as an aside, like, I've always found this as an important part to my playing style. We talked about style earlier, and
can we just pop you on your clean sound while we're just makes that.
Sorry, I have the gain like super,
fine.
But you know, I've always spent a lot of time, as a lot of guitar players do, with the metronome, trying to get my technique together and everything. One of the things that's really super important to me when soloing is to take all that and just like throw it out the window. And when you're playing, to play with a lot of like aggression and attitude and vinegar and balls, and when you play notes like that you like the way the sound of that note is, what I'm actually doing is I'm not being too careful about how I'm going about hitting it. In other words, I'm hitting like all the strings before doing that.
Yeah.
I'm maybe grabbing another string at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying what's going on, interacting, and not so worried about like that I'm going to play the exact notes. So when you put that together in a solo, you get this real kind of aggression.
Yeah.
And it's like really important to me, especially if you get the wah going too. It's like,
Do it, man.
Yeah. That's such an important aspect.
Does the inner 15-year-old boy come out of you?
Absolutely. You got, like, to me, players that don't have that have difficulty. Like, it's great. Like, having technique and facility in developing the craft is something I'm totally into.
Yeah.
But being able to play the guitar like a guitar player, like just that attitude, you got to take advantage of the instrument. It has... it's strings on a piece of wood. It's like you can make it sound like anything.
Yeah.
Put everything into it. Don't be timid about it. One thing I don't like is timid players. I want people to scream when they play.
It's still what I love the most about the electric guitar, and I think why it's become just the modern instrument of choice in the world, is that as much as I'll enjoy listening to music with almost any kind of instrument on it, but there's really nothing quite like the electric guitar to just express any kind of emotion.
Absolutely.
Most instruments have a sound and they make that noise, and if you're an accomplished musician on there, you can probably get it to sort of, you can get elements of light and shade, but nothing goes from like over here to over here like an electric guitar does. Obviously, you've got to have all the stuff to make that happen, but although it's such a great instrument.
It is. I've seen it done. Guys with playing acoustic do that too. It's such an expressive instrument. And the funny thing is that a lot of the other instruments they're trying to emulate that. Different.
I suppose keyboards with synth elements can.
Yeah, what are they trying to do? Get feedback on a synth. Get aggression, get distortion.
So do you break a lot of strings when you're playing?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not break a lot of strings. I've been using Ernie Ball Slinky strings forever and ever and ever.
Just a 9-gauge?
10 gauge. Yeah, 10. Yeah. 10 through 46. The 7 string is the low 56.
Yeah.
My tech and good friend Maddie changes my strings regularly, so we don't overplay on any of the guitars. I mean, but even then, we don't need to change them every day. They last and they generally do not break.
Yeah.
But it has happened on occasion. I mean, I think every guitar player has experienced that, playing a high note and then.
What have you done? I mean, there's the Ernie Ball and other brands, I guess, as well. But Ernie Ball have sort of pioneered that kind of higher density string. Cobalt a few years back, Paradigm more recently.
M Steel and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, is that a string that you that will appeal to you in terms of the extra performance maybe, or life it'll give the guitar?
Absolutely. I have to say I'm really is as much as the advancement in technology and developing the guitars has been, and the different engineers that I've been mentioning and their dedication to it, their dedication to exploring new formulas and technologies and materials as far as strings are concerned, and what Brian Ball has done in that area is just so impressive to me, because in some ways, guitar players don't think too much about it. It's like string.
We talked about that, didn't we? Plectrum, string.
Right.
These are the I guess some of the most affordable elements to what brings to your rig, and yet really scientifically, I guess strings and picks are going to contribute.
They
arguably
sure are
more to the tone than what wood the guitar's made from.
Absolutely.
Not that any of that doesn't contribute, but you just think it is important that you've got a pick that sounds and feels great, and strings that are the best that you can get them to be.
And the whole way that when you play guitar, that a string resonates, and the way that it feels under your fingers, and the tension that you get very used to. As we talked about before, guitar is a really expressive instrument, so it involves a lot of bending and manipulating of the notes. And of course, it's really easy to make a guitar sound bad because you have the ability to change the tuning at whim. But it's also really not easy, but it's really rewarding to try to make it sound beautiful. So all that stuff that you're very used to is you don't want to sacrifice when you hear that a string company changed something. So what's impressive to me about the Paradigm strings, so those are the new strings that are the unbreakable strings that are super, super, super strong, is that they maintained the sound of a slinky string. They feel, blind taste test, same string. But they dramatically increase the strength of the string, which is great for any guitar player who wants to break a string.
Or corrode. I mean, I guess you're fortunate. You get to have a tech who changes your strings.
Yeah, I'm a little spoiled.
Every few days.
Right.
But I mean, I'll typically change my strings probably, I don't know, maybe every 6 or 8 weeks or something like that. So and I absolutely know that probably for the last 4 weeks of that, I'll be playing with a string that doesn't have that nice new feel to it. So I'm kind of cool with the I'm hoping the Paradigm thing works out for me. So
absolutely,
it should be cool.
Yeah, it's great technology, and they really made some incredible strides in that.
Cool, man.
That science. Yeah. I said I had a couple of tricks. I'll show you one more.
Yes.
So my amp has one secret weapon. Okay. So we talked about before. This is the last thing I'll bother you with. We talked about before.
We could do this all day, man. It's not a bother at all.
So the whole thing with playing heavy rhythms and players using 7-string guitars, 8-string guitars, things like that, and you're playing through a high gain amp, right? Maybe if you're using something digital, you can do that trickery where you're gating it and you're cranking up the gain. So on my amp, what I wanted to do is have a feature that you can step on.
Oh, you got more buttons.
I have more buttons.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's going to that will bring that quality out. Like it's almost like it's a mastering quality. So if I was listening to a mix and I wanted the guitar to have some hair on it and just kind of like do this thing, we might add like 3K to it or something like that. We built that into the amp. It's actually not on the foot switch that comes with it, but it's MIDI accessible. The feature is called Shred. It's aptly called Shred. So what Shred will do is it kind of shifts the voicing up to like the higher mid, and it's going to accentuate like some gain in that area. All right, so I'm going to have you engage the Shred. So
engage the Shred.
Engage Shred. So you can have Shred on either channel 2 or 3. In this case, all you have to do is you just go up. We'll go channel 2.
So you can do this via MIDI.
MIDI, yeah.
As well. Yeah. And what's actually happening in Shred mode then? Is it more gain, more
no? So
curve?
It's kind of taking like the upper middle and emphasizing that. So it's like it's adding gain in that upper.
I get it. That
yeah. So it
kind of thing where the guitar goes into feedback, kind of that.
Yeah, it kind of brings that out. It was really creatively done. The way that Randy voiced it, it especially, and I'll show you. And if I had a 7-string, it would be even better. But do we have? Oh man, that's like
brutal. I love it.
Okay, so you want to go into it? All right.
Yeah.
So the Shred. So the
Shred.
The other. Yeah, you gotta love the name of it. The other trick up my sleeve. So I play a lot of 7-string stuff. I know a lot of players that do as well, and that play drop tunings. There's a song in our current set called "As I Am" that's on our Train of Thought album, where the guitar is tuned to C, so 2 whole steps down. A lot of players use 8-string guitar. This Shred feature is going to bring out clarity and aggression when you're playing those lower kind of riffs. So what I'll do is I'll kind of chunk on a couple of low chords. And I want you to engage Shred. All right, so it's going to be this
Shred
here.
2 and 3. So you're on shred
I'm on 2,
so I
so
can
we'll
just
go to 2.
upwards, can't I? Yeah.
Now, if this is all MIDI switchable, so you wouldn't have to do that. But anyway, so here's no shred.
Sounds okay.
So just when you thought the amp wasn't like as aggressive enough and forward enough, that shred will just put it over the top.
When did you first do the 7-string thing then? I don't mean as in with any ball, I just mean as a player. When did you first do the 7-string?
That was when we went into the writing sessions for our Awake album, which is our third album. We were in New York City. I got delivered to me a Steve Vai 7-string. That was the only one that was really around.
That's about the only one, isn't it?
And it was black with green pickups. And I picked it up, and we wrote The Mirror, which is on that album, which is, I played the riff just now. It's a very simple riff, but it's heavy. And I just started, the way that I kind of look at 7-string guitar and eventually 8, which we're working on.
Oh, really?
The way that I approach it is just like an extended range of the instrument. So anything that I would play on a 6-string, if I was doing a line, and let's say that line was in C sharp, and I wanted to do something like that, right? But it sounded like maybe too wimpy down here. It just gives me more range, I mean, John Mayung plays 6-string bass. Yeah. He's able to go down there, so why can't I?
But you think with an 8 you'd go, because I don't know whether it's the width of the fretboard when you get to 8, but I start to find that I just can't hold the thing like a normal guitar.
Right.
And the players that I think that I enjoy listening to that seem to get the most out of 8 strings are almost like the sort of, I don't know, like the Stanley Jordan type players, where they all of a sudden it's not really traditional guitar anymore. It's almost like they're playing the piano on the guitar.
Gotcha.
I often think with an 8-string, it's like, well, why don't you just tune the 7-string lower?
Right.
But you're quite comfortable with that wider board,
Well, I don't know, because I now here's the reveal. I haven't played one.
Okay.
And in the same way, this is my plan. Let's see. I don't know if it's going to happen, but this is my plan. So in the same way that back in 1994, whenever that album came out in 94, I'm not sure when we started writing it, but when I got that 7-string for the first time, literally in the studio in front of the guys, hey, check this out. And we started writing, and that music came out of me playing that guitar. I want to approach the 8-string in the same way. So it's something we're developing now. There's no schedule for it. When it does happen one day and I get it, I want to be in the studio, pick it up and start writing. See what happens. And not really think too much about it. And think of it just kind of as an extension of range of the instrument. Yeah. But we'll see.
So this has been absolutely one of the favourite interviews I've ever done.
Oh, thank
you. Apart from that 5 minutes I met you in LA, not met you before, didn't really know what you were going to be like. But you're such a down-to-earth, humble kind of guy with some insane chops. I got to ask you, what's next for you and Dream Theater, and just you're going to got other projects going on, or what's the future? What's the future?
Thank you for saying all those kind words, and it's been great hanging out with you too. This has been great.
Thanks, man.
I think it's a really cool series. I watched a couple of the other ones you did with Paul, and yeah, it's really cool. Well, Dream Theater, right now, we're currently on tour, as I said before, celebrating Images and Words, which came out when I was half my age, 25 years ago. And we're taking that throughout Europe. We just finished a bunch of UK dates up. We'll be in Asia, we'll be in the US.
Oh, cool.
And that'll take us through the year. In August of this year, August 7th to be exact, I have my first ever guitar camp that I'm running. Yeah. So it's called John Petrucci's Guitar Universe.
Yeah.
And it has a collection of some of the most insanely talented guitar players. So it's me. I'm not including myself in that. So me, Tony McAlpine, Tosin Abasi, Devin Townsend, Rusty Cooley, Andy James from the UK here, Andy McKee, Jason Richardson, a ridiculous amount of talent.
Mike is this Mangini. One of these things when you just maybe you get a very limited number of spaces and you go and spend a week with you? Or
yeah, that's what it is. So I think the max capacity is 200. It's in August 7th to 11th in Glen Cove, Long Island, New York, which is not too far from where I grew up.
Yeah.
It's on the North Shore, a bit further west. In part of Long Island we call the Gold Coast because it's filled with mansions and things like that. And it'll be 4 days of madness, of instruction, of hanging out, barbecue.
And are there spaces left on that?
There are. Yeah.
So if we put a link in the description
there's
below.
not too many, so I would get there quick. This is the first one I've ever done. I dropped in on Joe Satriani's camp in the same location.
I was just about to say Guthrie did a couple of the Joe Satriani. Guthrie Govan did a couple of the Joe Satriani ones, and I know he's always enjoys that. And I see a little bit of YouTube footage from them, and it does look
cool.
It's insane to think that you can. I don't know. It's probably the equivalent of when you and I were teenagers of someone like Jimmy Page or Stevie Ray Vaughan going, I'm going to do it, which they just never did.
You never did. It's so cool.
So it's very, very cool.
Yeah, when I think about the musicianship and the talent and the camaraderie that's going to take place, that's going to be so cool. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that'll be in August, and then Dream Theater will continue on in the fall with this tour, and we'll probably be in the studio next year.
So the 8-string concept album comes out.
Yeah, right? It all depends on the timing, if it links up. I think we got our fill of concept album with The Astonishing was our last album, which was a huge project that took many years in the making, not only in making the album, but in the tour and developing the production for that tour. And it was something that was like really rewarding, but so much work and time went into that. So the next one will be non-conceptual, probably heavy and use a lot of shred.
3-minute pop songs. Boom.
we're going to get back to like playing some metal, so it'll be fun.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Well, look, man, I said it's such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything. And everybody, please, round of applause. John Petrucci.
Nice.
Thanks, man.
You got it. Rhythm. I'll go back to my...
I've got to go to the bathroom.
Sorry, John. Too, actually.
It's like the most awkward part of the interview.
That's all right.
Let's just do that first.
I got the same feeling.
I was kind of sitting there thinking, can I do this till the end of the interview? And then I'm thinking, no, I can't do it. So
no worries.
Go first.
No, you go. I was having the same thought. I was like, this is going to be the last thing because I got to pee like a racehorse.
I know. I was thinking, I can't do it.
All right.
I've never done that.
One of us broke.
Yeah.